Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm a certified personal trainer.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm a Registered Dietitian-Nutritionist.
And this is a podcast dedicated to educating women on their journey to optimal health. There's so much that we can do to optimize our health, but we've talked to so many women who just simply don't know how.
These conversations are what inspired us to start Omnia Fit. The Omnia Fit podcast is all about interviewing certified professionals to educate women on improving our health. We'll talk about things like stress relief through exercise, what we need to know about our hormones, the truth behind fad diets, and more. So subscribe, follow along, and let us know if there are any topics you want to hear more about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast, where I am interviewing Kate Egan, aka my partner in crime with starting Omnia Fit. She's a registered dietitian-nutritionist, and if you don't know what that is, then you are in the right place. In this podcast, you will hopefully learn a few things about what a dietitian is, what they do, and how one could maybe even help you if you're interested. You'll also have a couple chances to laugh at us and hear a surprising story or two from Kate's experience. So let's meet Kate and learn about what a dietitian does. All right, so you're a dietitian-nutritionist. What even is that?
So it's kind of a joke with people who go into dietetics that they lie about what they do when they go to parties. People say they're like an accountant or, a business person. Because when I first say dietitian, people either don't know what that is, and they kind of act like they do, and they're like, oh, so what is that? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, so food, they get like the food and they get diet out of it. And so it's either like, oh, can you write me a diet plan? Or it's kind of like when nurses say, people ask them like, can you look at the mole on my back? It's kind of like,
yeah, my
uncle has high blood pressure. Like, what should he do? Like when you're like eating a chip and salsa at a party and you're like, I don't know. Who's your uncle?
Did they start asking you like, what's in this salsa? Is this good for me to eat?
Well, and it's also like the biggest thing is people are like, oh, the dietitian's having cake. Yeah. You're like, yeah, I'm having cake. Are you having cake? Are we having cake? Like, are we going to make this weird? So yeah, not a word everyone's familiar with. But long story short, dietitians are essentially the most credentialed. You can think of it as like the medical nutrition expert. Yeah. So we are technically the only people that can give out medical nutrition advice for people with actual medical conditions. And that can mean a lot of different things. But we are essentially the most studied version of nutrition. So to become a dietitian, you have to get your undergraduate degree. And then from there is a very competitive process around dietetic internships, which are set up very similarly to medical residencies. So essentially you put your name into a system, you put in your GPA, you put in where you want to go, what your specialty you might want to go into, and it matches you essentially based on your GPA, your preference, kind of where you rank and all of that, and just kind of sends you somewhere. And it's a 50% placement overall.
Oh my gosh. So some people don't even get internships.
Many people, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I actually fully planned to do it that way. And then I did not pass a class my senior year, which threw a whole wrench in my life plans. And I was like, now what do I do?
Oh, I never knew this.
So you have to match in the spring. It's usually around Valentine's Day was kind of like the joke. Like you could either make a great Valentine's Day or ruin it.
You get the card that you want. You get the card from that person you want, or you don't get anything.
Yeah, it's like grade school. Like, did my crush give me a Valentine?
Is my box empty or is it full of
do I have a future or not? Yeah. So I chose not to apply. I was told I still could, but I kind of knew the chances of me getting in, still having to retake a class were so low that I decided not to apply. And I worked in a hospital for a year, and then kind of looked at my options because I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. And for me, what inspired me was working in a hospital and seeing the disparity between people who work in business and people who work in food. And the person running the nutrition department had a business degree, and all the rest of us had nutrition degrees. And it was like, why is he telling us what to do? You know, like, why is the business person in charge of the nutrition, and we know the nutrition and he knows the business, and we don't speak the same language? So
I think there's parallels of that in like every single industry. It's so frustrating.
And every business place, right? Like the person who runs one department doesn't know what the other department means, and it's everywhere.
Oh my God. Everyone listening to this is probably like, holy shit, that's not my life right now.
Yeah. Or I mean, like, a great example is like, you can become a principal and never be a teacher.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you have no idea what a teacher's job is like, but you're in charge of all the teachers.
Right.
Something like I've heard people in my family complain about. So I kind of saw that disconnect. And so there is another pathway, which is sort of the alternative internships. They don't require you to enter that process. You still can if you want to and do both, but they let you know before that deadline if you're in or not. So they're kind of like an alternative path. So that's what I went with. And then once you get into one of those two paths, so you either do the traditional, it's called DICAS application, that'll send like shivers down someone's spine if you say that to a dietitian, DICAS, or these alternative routes. And from there, it's anywhere from 6 months to 2 years of unpaid internship.
No way.
Yeah.
So this is not including the year in the hospital that you did?
Yeah. So I worked for a year in between, which is kind of like a gap year, I guess you could consider it. I did really basic nutrition work. But that was like a personal choice. So a lot of people go right from college to this program, and it is totally unpaid and you pay tuition. So a lot of people, it was kind of the choice of like, do I do grad school because then I could take out loans, or do I somehow save up like 20 grand to do an unpaid program for a year? It's a really bad system.
Oh my gosh.
Really, really bad.
Who could do that unless you were just born with money?
Yeah.
Or you just love food so much that you figure it out.
Some people take out like personal loans, they get family loans. Otherwise, like, a lot of people would try to stay close to like where they had a family member that they could at least live with and then cut down on their expenses. For me, my program was a grad school program. So I ended up doing the only program that has an MBA attached to it.
Okay.
So Master's of Business. So I did my internship hours, 40 hours a week, and then I took night classes. So they're all structured a little bit differently if they do have the graduate degree or not. You're usually taking classes in a mix with internship. Some have you working 4 days a week. Some are like 2 and 2. Kind of depends on the program you end up in. Mine was mostly internship during the day, class at night, and I did that for 2 years. So you kind of filter through different rotations. The big ones with dietetics that you're going to rotate through when you're learning is food service. So running kitchens. So food service doesn't mean like prepping vegetables. I mean, it does when you're in your internship sometimes, but it means like running a kitchen. So running a hospital kitchen or running a school kitchen. That means you're doing all of the forecasting, ordering all the food, you're doing the menu planning, you're making schedules for the employees. It's a very like business
I was gonna say, that's where the business
task.
comes in.
Yeah. And so usually everyone does one of those. Everyone usually does a community rotation. So that can be anything from working for like the women and infant and children, like what used to be known as food stamps, that program, and anything from like community breastfeeding classes to running farmers markets that take like the EBT cards for elderly population. Mine was teaching. So I was teaching at an alternative high school and at an elementary school, teaching nutrition. And then from there, you do clinical, which is some internships are like 90% clinical, if that's what you want to go into. Mine was a lower percent because most of us were business focused. But clinical is where it's like the real, like, that's where the intensity is. Clinical is like where everyone cries, everyone has mental breakdowns.
Just because you're like in hospitals dealing with...
It's medical. It's very medical. So people don't totally know what dietitians do in the hospital and it can vary based on your hospital. But we are actually the ones who write tube feedings, which is a scientific like calculation based on your labs. So you take a patient's labs and their status, and you see what kind of tube feeding they need, what they need in their tube feeding, how much protein, how much carbohydrates, how much fat, what vitamins and minerals they're low in, what they need added, what medications might need to be added in there. Certain medications add calories that you have to account for.
That sounds so intense.
It's very intense. And just if you've ever worked in a hospital, it's just an intense environment. Like you walk in and people have gaping wounds, or, you know, they're non-responsive, or they're in a coma, or you walk in and someone is literally hooked up to so many tubes you can't evaluate them, you know. It's just draining. Like you're in this hospital environment and stressful, and, you know, it's probably similar to any job, like right out of college and you're doing real things for the first time and you're like, oh, this matters. Like what I'm doing is real and it counts for something.
But also like quick shout out to all the frontline workers, because I've also worked in hospitals too.
Yeah.
It is so like, it is draining doing it day in and day out and being in there and not even like having to do what they do. So like, I'm just going to pause real quick.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, hands down to everybody who does that day in and day out. Like, you're the effing bomb. I don't know if I should swear on this podcast yet.
No, we can swear, I think.
Okay.
Maybe not episode 1, but
we'll throw the F-bombs in later on.
We'll wait like episode 4. No, it's draining. And some people I graduated with went on to do the clinical full time, the clinical route, and they love it and they're like rock stars. But that was enough for me. I did my rotation and I was like, yes, I'm a business and consulting girl. Like I want to talk to people about nutrition, but not in the hospital. So from there, you usually have little rotations you can pick and choose what you're interested in. I did some business focused ones. That can be anything from like, sometimes they incorporate like if you want to be a PT, like gym rotations or things like that. Because some people do go on to get their personal training certificate alongside it and they want to open a gym and they find like a rotation where they can do a gym rotation and do nutrition consulting, or usually they're kind of adaptable to what you want to do. Depends on where you go, like anything. But so at this point now you've done your undergrad, you've done your rotations. So for me, this was
rotations and grad school.
And grad school. Grad school used to be optional. It's now mandatory. So now everyone has to get a graduate degree of some kind to be a dietitian, which is a little bit of a hot topic. It's already really expensive and unattainable for people, and they kind of were like, here's a graduate degree too. Anyway, I did it that way. It worked out for me, but now it's mandatory. So at this point, you are 6 years of school, 7 for me technically. I worked for the year, so I'm 7 years out of high school at this point. And then you have to sit for the exam, which is a very intense process. I think it's at like a 70% pass rate at this point, but it is an electronic exam. I think nurses take one similar and a lot of health-related careers. But you sit down and
teachers too.
Yeah, it pops up with questions, and as you go, it changes the questions based on like how you're doing.
Oh, get out.
And you can get anywhere from like, I could be very wrong, but I think it was anywhere from like 200 to 300 questions. It's like a 3-hour exam. And it'll cut you off once you either passed or failed. So you have no idea like how you're doing, if you're doing great.
Every question you're like, I hope this isn't
it.
I hope this isn't it.
Yeah, and you'll start to see something come back up and you're like, oh no, did I not get it right last time? And that's why I'm getting it again. It's very stressful.
Yeah.
So you have to pass that. A lot of people don't pass on the first try. I did, by some miracle, I passed on the first try, but a lot of people don't, which is another like few months again of studying, retaking. So overall, like 7-8 year process to become a dietitian for a lot of people.
And that's why I think, I'm going to get this stat wrong, but something like dietitians are in the top 0.02% of like, you want, like, of everyone who knows about nutrition in the world, like, y'all are in, I don't know why I just talked Southern. You all are in like the top 0.02%.
Yeah, we
Something
are
crazy.
We have the title of the experts because of
Yeah.
that. You know, we know the body inside and out. We take medical anatomy, we take medical physiology, we take a lot of the phrases for most schools is you are a physics class away from pre-med. So besides physics, which isn't very related to medical at all, you get a pre-med degree. You take all the same classes as the pre-med students. So it's intense, and it's like a very real certification process, which is why we're the experts.
Right. So then that kind of directly leads into a question. I mean, we'll see why in a second. I feel silly asking this, but it's a legitimate question of, you're a dietitian-nutritionist. So what's the difference between you and just like a nutritionist?
Yeah, that's a burning question. So we actually used to just be registered dietitians. And a few years ago, they added on the nutritionist to make us more visible, because people don't Google dietitian, they Google nutritionist. It's a more of a buzzword. It's just what people are like more used to saying or looking for. And that's the first thing people kind of look for is nutritionist, someone who knows about nutrition. That makes sense to me. But that word doesn't have a meaning. There is no definition of a nutritionist. We can't sit here in the same way that I just broke down how to become a dietitian, how to become a nutritionist. It can mean 1,000 things. There are some very legitimate nutritionists out there. There are people who have it as part of their portfolio, like yourself.
That's why I was kind of laughing, because like the difference is like you and me. Because like for me, I call myself a nutritionist to my clients, but whenever someone asks for personal training and like nutrition help at the same time, I'm very upfront saying like basically what, and I took a course, basically I have like a certificate in nutrition coaching. And even in that coaching, I was really thankful for. I remember even sending you some screenshots of it of like, oh, you'd be so proud that they're teaching us this, of like, we can't write meal plans. We can't even like break down what your like macronutrients are, like your protein, fat, and carbohydrates. We can't even do that. We can basically like just help you create habits, which is basically what I do for personal training is, I mean, well, there's a lot more in personal training. That's another podcast. But just helping create habits and making healthier decisions. But a lot of times, and we're even taught, like in the certificate, we were taught to listen for things that are outside of your scope. So to listen for cues that tell you, does this person maybe have a eating disorder? Or does this person have a large goal or something else medically going on? And if that's the case, refer them out. Like, I will only help some. Can't have a podcast without a couple coughs, choking on nothing. But basically to refer out if it's anything beyond just like someone who wants to generally eat healthier.
Yeah. So that's
but
kind
not
of
everyone
where,
does that.
No.
So be very wary looking up nutritionist.
That's where the legal line is supposed to kind of be drawn, right? Is a nutritionist can give out general health advice or express certain personal beliefs about nutrition to others. That's sort of like where the line is crossed. Like you said, a big one is meal plans. That is something that I've seen violated at 100 gyms by, the chain gyms where you sign up and they're like, oh, we can write you a meal plan. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I could get you sued really quick if you don't watch it, but here we are. Because intentionally, like, meal plans should be specific, right? They should be written by someone who knows how they can affect your body. And that takes a certain level of education that they want to try to protect, because you could write someone a terrible meal plan and they could go into, a diabetic coma because you didn't ask them if they had diabetes before. And who knows what could happen because you're not customizing it to the person.
Or you just feel really fatigued, or you don't realize that they go for 5-mile runs every single day and they don't have enough energy to sustain their lifestyle.
You give them a 1,200 calorie meal plan and you don't know that they're an ultra marathoner. And sure, they should know not to take that advice from you, but if they do, it's on you because you gave it out to them.
You're someone they trust. They look up to you. They come to you for help. Also, side note, even if you're not an ultramarathoner, never just eat 1,200 calories. Also another podcast.
Yeah, a different topic.
This would be like 5 hours long if we went into all these holes now.
But yeah, I mean, in essence, something to watch out for is always like look up someone's credentials, look what class they took online, look up and see like where they got that title from. If they gave it to themselves, that's almost never a good thing. If they have no evidence that they've ever taken a class on anything, and this goes for honestly anything, right? Like not even just nutrition. Like if you're looking for like someone to help fix your acne, don't go to like a self-proclaimed esthetician who has never taken a class on skin. Probably not like your best route. But you know, some people truly like will go on, and you can buy from universities even sometimes, which is kind of bizarre, like a $200 course, and just take it, and then you could sell yourself as a nutritionist and like create a huge business out of it with no real context. And you know, the intention behind a lot of those is to function similar to the class that you took, where it's supposed to be like an accompaniment to another career that's similar, right? Where you maybe are a fitness instructor, or maybe you work in holistic skincare and you want to talk about how food can affect people's skin, something like that, like where you're giving out these general advice, but that doesn't always work that way. People don't always use it that way. So yeah, just always like do your research before you're going to listen to someone. It should always be a dietitian, ideally, but there are some good people out there functioning as nutritionists who have very good backgrounds. There are even some people who did the entire undergraduate process and then decided to kind of end there and go elsewhere. But anytime that it's something that's medical, advice personally to like your body functions, you always want to talk to a dietitian.
So with someone listening to this and hearing like especially all the hospital stuff that you did and like how intense it can get, meal planning, etc., what would, I'm going to say a normal person, meaning like your daily, like just knows they need to eat healthier, knows that they need to stop like binging cookies at night or drinking alcohol every single weekend, like why would someone come to a dietitian, or like maybe what would that look like?
Yeah, it can look like a lot of different things, honestly. There's so many reasons why someone would seek out a dietitian, and some of them even surprised me when I first sort of got into the work. It can be anything from like, I used to be a linebacker in college and I ate 20,000 calories a day almost, you know, like the people who are built to be huge 400-pound linebackers, and they're playing football 4 hours a day, and then suddenly they're not. And now what do I do? And they come and they're like, I don't know how to not eat this way. I've always been this huge muscular person who now doesn't work out 4 hours a day. Like, what do I do now? Like, how do I get to a healthy, just like normal person body where I work out for 45 minutes in the morning, you know? Things like that, which who would think of that? Like, I didn't think of that until I saw it. I was like, oh, that's a great question. Like, how do you get to like, what is your body supposed to look like without the sports and, you know, trying to bulk on muscle? Like, what does your new body look like in a healthy way? You know, people who develop type 2 diabetes or are told that they're pre-diabetic, who thought that they were very healthy, and sometimes it's partially genetic, and they're coming to an expert to say like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I just want to fix what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's not working, and I don't want to end up having long-term effects of this. And honestly, even just smaller things, you know, maybe it's not even a medical condition or a huge life transition. Sometimes they're just coming to you saying like, I have always struggled with food. Maybe it consumes like some of my life. I just want to develop this like healthy lifestyle.
Like I emotionally eat, or
Yeah.
I stress eat, or
I
feel like I'm eating healthy. I've had this before. This scares me. I feel like I'm eating healthy. I eat like fruits and veggies all day long, but I'm still not losing weight.
Yeah.
That one I get sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
you need to eat more.
Yeah.
And like even that's like eating more to lose weight is so counterintuitive, but that's where an expert comes in, because it's just understanding the body chemistry and the biology and how it's supposed to function and getting it to function optimally.
Yeah. Or you've just tried every diet and none of them seem to work, or none of them fit your lifestyle, or, you know, maybe all of your friends are doing keto, but you are a vegetarian, like, and you just want someone to give you something that will make you feel good and something that you can eat every day, and you don't have to think about it, and you don't have to like constantly be on a diet or constantly be thinking about your weight or your health, or, you know, how can I be healthier? How can I live longer? How can I, for some people it's like, how can I look better? Like,
have more energy is a big one too.
Yeah.
Like what you eat can really affect your energy levels.
Yeah. You know, people say like, my hair is like falling out. Like, you know, I
Seriously?
tried. Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Like, cause some people, you know, go through these phases with diets and they're not getting like protein, they're not getting minerals, and their hair will thin. And, you know, like little things like that where they're like, I don't know, my hair is like falling out. It's like, okay, we're going to do something about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be a lot of things.
Which also, I mean, that's a really cool point too. I didn't even think about like if you're choosing to be vegetarian or vegan for your own like morals or your own beliefs, save the animals, but then like making sure you get enough protein and making sure you get enough sustenance in other areas that fit also your lifestyle.
Yeah, certain vitamins and minerals that maybe you were getting before that you're no longer getting, and you're not sure, you know, do I just go pick up a pack from Walgreens of like vitamin B? What exactly do I need? All of those are great conversations to like sit down with an actual expert about. And what's great, I think, is that we don't need to like always be in your life. We can be a 3-session, 6-session, however long you need us. You can see us twice and then come back in 2 years, and we can talk about what you've done in those 2 years. We don't need to see you all the time to help you make like these big changes. So it doesn't need to be, you don't need to feel like it's this obligation of, you know, we're not Weight Watchers. You don't have to come like every week and check in with us unless you want to, in which case like we'd love to have you every week. But
and that's actually something I love, that I always kind of pitch to my personal training clients, because I'm the nutritionist, meaning I can't do all of that stuff, but I am the person that they see consistently. I can't just meet with someone twice and have them get results. Since I am a consistent person in their life, I can help them basically hold them accountable to what the dietitian wanted them to do. I do that with one of my clients right now, where dietitian tells her to do these certain things, and I follow up with her like, hey, how'd this go? Hey, and she meets with them like once a month. Yeah. So that's like a really good synergy that we found of me with a dietitian several times, get like the baseline, and then while you're working with me in my sessions, we follow up on that, but then you keep checking in with the dietitian. Just like an example of a beautiful way for a dietitian and like a good nutritionist to work together. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely if you know that fitness and nutrition are like places you need to start in life, you got 2 people to talk to right here. Yeah. Yep. We can help get you started. Even just a couple conversations. Awesome. So what even got you into, like, why did you want to become a dietitian?
So I remember taking all those quizzes in high school where they're kind of like, what personality type do you have? What kind of job do you want to go into? And I would always get nurse. I would always get like the helper careers, you know, like you want to help people and you want to make them healthy. And I was really into food in high school. That's kind of when I got into like healthy food and what healthy food meant. And I was just as bad as anyone else at that age. I was Googling like, what is healthy? And like the Special K diet. And, you know, like that was me at 16, like Googling, like, what is this diet? What's that diet? What is low carb? You know, that's how I kind of started to figure things out for myself. And my brother actually, when he was in college, lost a bunch of weight, and they found out that he was celiac, so he could not have gluten. And they referred him to a dietitian, which was the first that I had heard of a dietitian. And my mom went with him to the appointment, and she was like, you should look into this because this is really cool. And it's that like helper career that you want to do, but it's food and it's nutrition, and you've been really into that too. So that was it for me. I like looked it up and I thought, yeah, okay, I'll be a dietitian. And I'm really stubborn. So I went to school for dietetics and I stuck it out, and I did for my path. Like that was what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I definitely doubted it at times during OChem, biochem, right? Organic chemistry, biochemistry, physiology. It came to mind. Did I make the right choice?
What am I doing here?
But it was worthwhile. I love the knowledge I have. So that was kind of how I got into it.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up here. What is the craziest like experience that you had with a client, whether it was on your internship or after?
Oh, wow. I probably have a couple. One thing that I feel like I wasn't expecting about working in the hospital was how much you see crazy stories that have nothing to do with like what you're there to do. And if anyone's ever worked in a hospital, like as a nurse or whatever, and you get the consults to see people and you don't always have the backstory of what you're going in for, and it kind of just prints out like you have to see them for this. Like it kind of gets triggered by their labs or whatever it is. So like if their blood pressure is high, it would just send us a ding, like go do a high blood pressure consult. And you sometimes have no idea what you're walking into. And we went in to do a blood pressure consult, and my preceptor, who was like, every rotation that you do is kind of, you have someone kind of like leading you through it, who's experienced. And she went in and started talking to the husband, and she comes out and she's like, we are not doing, this is language, she was like, we're not doing a fucking blood pressure consult on this woman.
Episode 1.
And she's like,
Episode 1.
She's like, wait till I tell you about this. And it was like, it had been triggered because she had been in organ failure, because while giving birth, she had died and been resuscitated.
What?
And it triggered us to go talk to her about blood pressure, because she was essentially in like heart failure because her organs were still like recovering.
You're like, refer out,
like,
someone else.
Okay. This is not.
Food can help a lot of things, but
food
it
cannot help that. Like, we were like, blood pressure education. This woman does not need blood pressure education. But just things like that, you know, kind of seeing like so much of a patient care and all of that is, it just comes with commands, and you kind of go into AutoZone, and then things like that happen, and you're like, oh my God, these are like real people with real things happening to them. And this woman does not need a dietitian. Yeah. She does not need a dietitian. She just went through like the most traumatic thing of her entire life. Her husband just went through the most traumatic thing. And if
like, let's talk about your blood pressure.
Didn't take the second to figure out what was going on, and walked in there with our blood pressure sheet and been like, hey, we're here to talk about your blood pressure, she would have forever had a memory of dietitians being the worst people in the entire world who don't read the charts. So that was crazy. That was a great example of like, I can do a lot of things, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
I cannot help that.
No.
But yeah, I think honestly, doing some counseling like right out of college, right out of grad school was so educational too. I think I didn't realize, I had just spent 6 years learning about nutrition, and you kind of forget the baseline of like where people start at, and I had someone send me a day of eating that was only candy. And I thought that she was like making a joke. Like she thought she was like being funny, because to me that didn't even cross my mind that anyone has ever eaten only candy in a whole day.
We've all dreamed about it, especially when we were
I have dreamed
10.
about it when I was a child left alone. I probably came close like a few times, and that's not to poke fun at like that's what she had eaten. She genuinely sent that to me and was like, some days it looks like this, like what can I do about that? And it was like, yeah, no, you're right. This is your baseline. Like, this is where we're starting from. And we really started from there. Like, we started with like, how often do you eat like this? Like, how often do you grocery shop? Do you have a grocery store near you? Like, is that part of the issue? Do you not have time to make food? Like, really meeting people where they're at and just remembering like the 1,000 circumstances that go into food was so important. Even like in my teaching rotation, we were teaching high schoolers, and we were here in Chicago. It was like a lower income area, like not the greatest like food stores around. You know, a lot of them really got their food from like gas stations. There wasn't like great like big Whole Foods around the corner, or even like a big super Target where you could pick up like vegetables and stuff. It was a little bit of like a food desert, honestly. And the kids, like, we brought in sweet potatoes and we taught them how to like microwave sweet potatoes. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
It's a great trick. Like 5 minutes, sweet potatoes cooked. And they were obsessed with it. And they were like, I've never seen a sweet potato in the stores. And we were like, what do you mean you've never seen a sweet potato? And they were like, yeah, we've never really seen a sweet potato in the stores. Like, I'd have to go looking for one. Like, I'd have to go figure out where I can get a sweet potato. And we were like, yeah, that's where some people's baseline is at. Like, here I am up here talking to them about microwaving the sweet potato, and they're like, I don't even buy sweet potatoes. Like, where would I get that?
Now where do I get one? Let's take a step back and just getting the thing.
Yeah. I think some of my like craziest experiences have just been like, oh, we are all in like very different places with this. Yeah. And that's why it's important to talk to someone who has had all those conversations, I think, because you shouldn't ever be Googling something and feel bad about your situation, and Google something and see what I eat in a day of an influencer where she only shops at Whole Foods and eats 4 almonds for breakfast that are organic, no salt. And you go to the store and you're like, I don't even know where I would buy like no salt almonds, you know? And that's when people get frustrated and sad. And I think that's been all of my like weirdest experiences, has been like, oh yeah, okay, that's where we're starting. Like, I need to check myself and get down to you, because I am like up in the clouds with all of my knowledge that I have, and I'm not like meeting you where you're at. So
because like you said, 6 years in school, like you have all these understandings of things. It's like, what are the ABCs? Like, I know how to speak this language, but like some people just need to know what the alphabet is. Like, they don't even know, or even writing letters, or is it characters? Like, don't even know. And so just meeting them, like you said, where they're at, and making it manageable too, sounds like. So for everyone listening who are in their own walks of life, I mean, like baby who knows nothing to dietitian, and everyone falls somewhere in between, no matter where they're at, what is like one piece of advice you would give someone who maybe isn't quite ready to give you a call yet, but knows they need to make a little change?
I have 2.
I said 1. I'm just kidding.
It never hurts to eat more vegetables. That's like, I think, the easiest step 1 of anything. Like, if you're feeling like, oh gosh, I wish I could like eat a little bit healthier, I don't know where to start, I don't, like, truly eat a vegetable at every meal, and like you will feel like you made a big step today. Like, because let's be real, like, that's an easy thing to forget about. I mean, you make a vegetable side with dinner maybe, but like, I didn't have a vegetable lunch today. I could work on that. I could work on getting a vegetable into my lunch today, you know? Great step 1, eat some more veggies. Even if you're getting exactly the same and you incorporate more veggies, you're getting more vitamins, more minerals, more fiber. You're going to feel more energy. Your digestion's going to get better. Easy step 1. Another one is make changes that are sustainable. Like, make a change that you feel like you can continue to do every day, no matter like what the day is, whether it's your birthday, whether you're on vacation, whether you don't feel good, whether, you know, you're having like the worst day of your life. Like, make the changes that you still want to do every day.
I think that's a really good segue, because I don't know if it'll be the next podcast, but definitely within the next few, one all about just building habits, like taking those manageable steps. Like, on the docket. We already have that plan to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect segue, actually, into one of our next conversations.
Yeah.
So we need to stay tuned.
Coming soon.
How do you want people to reach you if they have questions and want to reach out and say, hey, I want to eat more than, I don't even know what I was about to say. I need help. Apparently I do too in talking.
Yeah. I mean, I think for now you can reach me via email, the Omnia Fit email, which we'll have in the description notes. And then within a few months, we'll have something bigger launched, and there'll be very direct ways to reach me on there. So
yeah. The nice thing about being the second person in Omnia Fit is to use the email for that. So yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts?
Google everyone that you want to take advice from on anything.
Yes.
Anything. Google them and find out what their credentials are.
Yeah.
And read up on dietetics because it's fun.
Or just set up a conversation with you.
Or set up a conversation with me and I can like ramble even more at you. So.
No, this is great. Great first podcast. Feeling inspired yet? We've got you covered. At the very end of the season, we'll be launching our Omnia Fit website. You'll be able to access a platform filled with on-demand workouts like yoga, HIIT, Zumba, barre, and more from several amazing instructors. You'll also have access to meal prepping tips, personalized grocery lists, and dozens of recipes given the official okay by our incredible dietitian, Kate.
Along with everything Stephanie mentioned, you'll also have access to schedule appointments with some of the licensed professionals featured in this season. Email info@omniafit.co to stay updated on our November launch date. You'll want to stay tuned because our first season listeners get their first month free. Just use promo code POD2021, that's POD 2021 to redeem.